Deep in the cosmic fabric of Bloodborne's universe exists a truth so profound, so utterly incomprehensible to mortal minds, that merely glimpsing it can shatter sanity itself. The Great Ones are beings that transcend our understanding of existence, entities that exist across multiple planes of reality simultaneously, wielding powers that make them appear as gods to the humans of Gehrman. Yet for all their cosmic might, for all their otherworldly nature, these beings suffer from a tragedy so universal that it binds them all together. Every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. This single statement, found inscribed upon the third of umbilical cord, tells us everything and nothing about these incomprehensible beings. And it is precisely this tragedy, this cosmic sorrow, that sets into motion the events that compel us, as hunters, to raise our weapons against these godlike entities. The question that haunts every player who delves deep into Bloodborne's labyrinthine lore is this: why do we kill the Great Ones? These beings are not simple monsters to be slain. They are not beasts driven by base hunger or malice. They are entities of such vast power and ancient existence that humanity seems like nothing more than insects scurrying beneath their notice. And yet, throughout our journey through Gehrman and the nightmares beyond, we find ourselves again and again confronting these cosmic deities, ending their incomprehensible existences with steel and fire and determination. To understand why we must kill the Great Ones, we must first understand what they are, what they want, and how their very existence has woven itself into the fabric of Gehrman's blood-soaked streets. The Great Ones are described in the lore as multidimensional beings that exist across several planes of existence. In the Japanese text, they are called Joisha, which translates to superior ones or those of high rank. This is fitting, as these entities reside on a higher plane than humanity. Their consciousnesses ascended to levels that our limited human intellects cannot fully grasp. They are not bound by the physical laws that govern our world. They can manipulate reality itself, create entire realms within dreams and nightmares, and touch the minds of those who seek them with visions that can elevate or destroy. The Healing Church and the scholars of Bjergenwerth spent generations attempting to understand these beings, to commune with them, to gain from them the secrets of transcendence. But in their pursuit of knowledge, in their desperate attempt to rise above humanity's base nature, they unleashed horrors upon Gehrman that would consume the city in an endless night of beasts and blood. What makes the Great Ones truly fascinating is not merely their power, but their nature. Despite being entities that exist beyond human comprehension, the lore repeatedly tells us that they are sympathetic in nature. This phrase appears multiple times throughout the game's item descriptions and environmental storytelling, suggesting that these cosmic beings are not the malevolent, actively hostile entities one might expect from creatures inspired by Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. Instead, they respond to prayers, they grant wishes, they even seem to desire connection with humanity. When Gehrman, the first hunter, lost his beloved student Lady Maria and fashioned a doll in her image, he prayed to a Great One to bring it to life. The Moon Presence answered his prayer, giving consciousness to the plain doll that now serves hunters in the hunter's dream. When the people of the fishing hamlet cried out for vengeance against the hunters who butchered them, Kos answered their prayers by creating the hunter's nightmare. The Great Ones are listening, always listening, and they respond to the desperate cries of those below them. But there is a darkness at the heart of this sympathy, a fundamental incompatibility between the Great Ones and humanity that makes their interactions inevitably tragic. The Great Ones cannot have children of their own. This is the central tragedy that defines their existence. Every Great One loses its child through some means or another, and then yearns for a surrogate to replace what was lost. This is not mere desire. This is a cosmic need that drives these entities to reach down from their higher planes of existence and touch the mortal world, seeking among humanity the children they cannot have themselves. Udin, the formless Great One whose essence is blood itself, impregnates women through invisible means, creating offspring that are part human, part cosmic entity. The Moon Presence binds hunters to the dream, seeking among them a surrogate child to replace what it has lost. Mergo, the infant Great One born of Queen Gehrman's union with Udin, was taken from its mother and became the source of the nightmare of Mensis. The tragedy of the Great Ones is that in their desperate search for children, they bring suffering to humanity. And this is where we, as hunters, enter the picture. We are not merely warriors fighting beasts in the streets of Gehrman. We are participants in a cosmic drama that has been playing out since long before we arrived in this cursed city. The blood we receive in that first transfusion, the blood that was supposed to cure us of some unnamed ailment, binds us to forces far greater than we could have imagined. That blood connects us to the Great Ones themselves, links us to the hunter's dream, and sets us on a path that will inevitably lead us to confront these godlike beings. The contract we sign upon arrival in Gehrman, etched into our very mind in the form of the hunter's mark, ensures that we cannot truly die. Instead, we awaken in the dream each time we fall, bound to continue the hunt no matter how many times we are struck down. We are tools in a game we do not fully understand, pawns moved by forces that view us as little more than potential vessels, potential surrogates, potential answers to their unending grief. The first Great One most players will encounter, though they may not realize it at the time, is the Moon Presence. This entity, sometimes referred to as Flora in certain texts, though in-game lore describes it as nameless, is the true master of the hunter's dream. It exists as a pale, skeletal being covered in writhing tentacles, with no face save for a hollow void where a head should be. The Moon Presence does not appear until the very end of the game, but its influence permeates every moment of our hunt. It was the Moon Presence that answered when Lawrence and his associates beckoned, using a third of umbilical cord to precipitate an encounter with what the lore calls the Pale Moon. This Great One created the hunter's dream as a means to further its own desires, which primarily involve the killing of other Great Ones. Before we ever arrive in Gehrman, the Moon Presence had already bound Gehrman, the first hunter, to the dream, making him a prisoner and a guide for countless hunters who would come after. Gehrman's fate is particularly tragic. He sits in his wheelchair in the dream, speaking cryptically of how we should use the doll if it pleases us, offering advice and weapons, seemingly trying to help us through the long night. But listen to him when he sleeps, and you'll hear him cry out in anguish, begging to be freed from his prison. The hunter's dream is both sanctuary and cage, a place where we return each time we die, but also a place from which there is no true escape unless the hunt is completed. Gehrman has been trapped here for longer than we can imagine, training hunter after hunter, watching them go out to face the horrors of Gehrman, knowing that most will eventually succumb to the blood's curse and become beasts themselves. He has seen the cycle repeat endlessly, and he longs for it to end. When we defeat Mergo's wet nurse and the hunt appears to be over, Gehrman offers us a way out. He will kill us in the dream, severing our connection to it, allowing us to wake in the real world with no memory of the horrors we witnessed. It is an act of mercy, an attempt to spare us from the fate that has befallen him. But if we refuse Gehrman's offer, if we choose to resist, then the truth reveals itself. Gehrman fights us not out of malice, but because he is trying to free us the only way he knows how. And when we defeat him, when the first hunter falls before us, that is when the Moon Presence descends. It comes down from the pale moon that hangs in the dream sky, reaching out with its skeletal limbs to embrace us. This is the moment of truth. If we have not consumed 3/3 of umbilical cord items, if we have not gained enough insight into the true nature of the Great Ones, then the Moon Presence succeeds. It binds us to the dream just as it bound Gehrman, and we become the new host, the new guide for future hunters. The cycle continues unchanged. We take Gehrman's place in the wheelchair, freeing him from his torment, but condemning ourselves to the same fate. We become a surrogate child for the Moon Presence, imprisoned in service to its inscrutable will. This is why we kill the Great Ones, or at least this is one reason. The Moon Presence has created a system that perpetuates suffering. It uses humans as tools, binding them to the dream, forcing them to hunt and kill in service to its own goals. Based on what we observe, those goals appear to involve eliminating other Great Ones, though the exact reason remains shrouded in mystery. The Moon Presence may be jealous of other Great Ones who have found surrogates, or perhaps it fears the ascension of rivals. It could simply seek to consolidate its own power over the mortal realm. Whatever its true motives, the Moon Presence has turned the hunt into an eternal cycle of violence and despair. Hunters become trapped in the dream, serving until another hunter comes to replace them, on and on without end. By killing the Moon Presence, we break this cycle. We free ourselves and future hunters from servitude to this cosmic entity. But to kill the Moon Presence, we must first gain insight. We must consume 3/3 of umbilical cord items, remnants of the Great One's attempts to create children. These cords are scattered throughout the game, each with its own dark story. One comes from the abandoned old workshop, the place where the hunter's dream was first conceived. One can be obtained from the abandoned Upper Cathedral Ward, found near where the Healing Church conducted their twisted experiments. One drops from Ariana's monstrous infant, a child born after the blood moon appeared, conceived when Udin invisibly impregnated her. And one can be obtained from Iosefka's impostor, another victim of Udin's formless touch. These cords represent the Great One's failures to create true children, and consuming them grants us insight, quite literally. The game's insight stat is more than just a currency for purchasing items or summoning help. It represents our growing understanding of the true nature of reality, our ability to perceive the cosmic truths that lie beneath the surface of the world. With enough insight, we can see things that were always there, but invisible to ignorant eyes. The lesser amygdalae that cling to the buildings of Cathedral Ward become visible once we have 40 insight or after we defeat Rom, the Vacuous Spider. These creatures have always been there, watching, waiting, but human minds were not capable of perceiving them without first touching the eldritch truth. By consuming 3/3 of umbilical cords, we gain enough insight to resist the Moon Presence's attempt to bind us. When it reaches out to embrace us, to make us its surrogate child, we resist. The Moon Presence realizes what has happened, that we have evolved beyond mere humanity, that we have become something capable of threatening even a Great One. And so it attacks us, desperately trying to destroy us before we can become something greater than it can control. The fight against the Moon Presence is, mechanically speaking, not the hardest battle in Bloodborne. After the intense duel with Gehrman, the Moon Presence can feel almost anticlimactic. But symbolically, narratively, this battle represents the culmination of everything we have endured. We are not just fighting a boss. We are fighting against the very force that has enslaved countless hunters, that has perpetuated an endless cycle of violence, that has turned the hunt into a tool for its own mysterious purposes. When we strike down the Moon Presence, when this pale, skeletal god falls before our weapons, we do not simply defeat it, we transcend it. The ending that follows shows us transforming into an infant Great One, a small, squid-like creature that the plain doll cradles gently in her arms. We have not merely killed the Moon Presence, we have replaced it. We have ascended to become a Great One ourselves, representing the next stage of human evolution. This is the childhood's beginning ending, the true ending of Bloodborne, where humanity finally achieves the transcendence that scholars like Willem and Lawrence spent their entire lives pursuing. But the Moon Presence is not the only great one we must face in our hunt. Long before we confront Flora in the dream, we have already encountered and killed other cosmic entities, each for reasons that are at once pragmatic and cosmically significant. One of the first great ones we face is Rom, the Vacuous Spider, found in the waters of Moonside Lake at Byrgenwerth. Rom is a curious case among the great ones because, unlike most of her peers, Rom appears to have once been human. Based on Mikolash's dialogue and her location at Byrgenwerth, she was likely a scholar who studied under Master Willem before she underwent a transformation that elevated her to the status of a great one. The lore tells us that it was Kos, or some say Cosm, who granted Rom eyes on the inside, the gift of cosmic insight that allowed her to transcend humanity. But this ascension came at a terrible cost. Rom lost her intelligence, her memories, her very sense of self. She became vacuous, empty of thought, a hollow vessel that exists only to perform one crucial function. That function is to maintain the barrier, the veil that prevents normal humans from seeing the true horrors that exist around them. When we arrive at Byrgenwerth and speak to Master Willem, the old man says nothing. He simply points out at the lake, directing our attention to what lies beneath. When we plunge into those waters and find Rom waiting there, she does not attack us immediately. She is passive, seemingly unaware of our presence, surrounded by her children who guard her with their bladed legs. Rom does not want to fight. She is not aggressive or hostile. She is simply existing, maintaining the barrier that keeps Gehrman's citizens blissfully ignorant of the cosmic reality pressing down upon them. The lesser amygdalae that cling to buildings, the truth of the pale blood moon, the presence of great ones walking among humans, all of this is hidden behind Rom's veil, kept from human sight by this vacuous spider's continued existence. So why must we kill Rom? Why must we shatter this barrier and expose humanity to truths that will drive many to madness? The answer lies in what the barrier is protecting, or more accurately, what it is hiding. Rom's veil prevents humans from perceiving cosmic horrors, keeping the blood moon hidden from sight and the great ones invisible to mortal eyes. It maintains a fragile separation between the mortal realm and the nightmare, though whether it actively prevents the full manifestation of these horrors or simply obscures them from view remains unclear. But this barrier is not a solution to Gehrman's problems. It is a bandage over a festering wound, a temporary measure that does nothing to address the root causes of the city's afflictions. The scourge of the beast continues to spread. The healing church continues its twisted experiments with old blood. The school of Mensis continues its attempts to commune with Mergo, heedless of the consequences. All of these horrors persist behind Rom's barrier, hidden but not healed. To truly end the hunt, to address the source of the scourge, we must first tear away the veil and confront what lies beneath. When we strike down Rom, when the vacuous spider finally falls and her body dissipates into arcane light, the barrier shatters. The blood moon appears in the sky, hanging low and red and terrible. Everywhere throughout Gehrman, lesser amygdalae become visible, their hideous forms clinging to cathedrals and chapels like cosmic parasites. The very air seems to thicken with eldritch presence, and we hear for the first time the crying of an infant, the wails of Mergo echoing from somewhere far away. This is what Rom was hiding. This is the truth that lurks beneath Gehrman's Gothic architecture and Victorian sensibilities. The city has always been on the verge of descending into a nightmare, and Rom's barrier was the only thing keeping it from tipping over that edge. By killing Rom, we push it over. We expose the full horror of what Gehrman has become, and in doing so, we make it possible to finally address the source of that horror. Some might argue that killing Rom is a mistake, that by destroying the barrier, we make things worse rather than better. And there is truth to this argument. The immediate aftermath of Rom's death is chaotic and terrifying. Citizens who were already struggling with the beast's scourge now face horrors they cannot comprehend. The night becomes even more dangerous, even more saturated with cosmic dread. But this is necessary. You cannot heal a wound without first cleaning it, no matter how painful that cleaning might be. You cannot end a nightmare by pretending it doesn't exist. Rom's barrier was an act of cowardice disguised as protection, a way for Master Willem to hide from the consequences of his and Lawrence's actions rather than confronting them directly. By destroying the barrier, we force the truth into the open. We make it impossible to look away from what the scholars of Byrgenwerth and the clergy of the Healing Church have wrought. And only by confronting this truth can we hope to find a way to end it. With the barrier down and the blood moon revealed, we can now perceive Queen Gehrman, the ghostly figure of the Thumerian queen who appears before us with her belly sliced open, blood pouring from the wound where her child was taken. She is a tragic figure, eternally bound to the place where she lost her offspring, unable to move forward, unable to find peace. Gehrman was the ruler of Pthumeru, an ancient civilization that existed long before the city of Gehrman was ever built. The Pthumerians were the first to discover the secrets of blood, the first to unlock the old blood found deep in the chalice dungeons beneath the earth. They were the first to commune with the Great Ones, and in doing so, they brought both great power and terrible curses upon themselves. Queen Gehrman was granted an audience with a Great One, specifically with Udon, the Formless One, whose essence is blood itself. Udon is perhaps the most powerful and most mysterious of all the Great Ones. Unlike other cosmic entities that have physical forms, Udon exists only as voice and influence, having transcended even the need for a body. This formlessness makes Udon particularly dangerous, as it can exist anywhere that blood flows, which in Bloodborne's universe means essentially everywhere. Udon's essence permeates the old blood that flows through Gehrman's streets, that courses through the veins of its citizens, that is administered by the Healing Church as a cure for all ailments. Every person who receives blood ministration unknowingly takes Odin into themselves, becomes a potential vessel for this formless entity's will. And Odin, like all Great Ones, yearns for a child. Udon does not seek surrogates the way other Great Ones do. Instead, Udon creates children directly, impregnating women through some invisible means that defies human understanding. Queen Gehrman was one such woman, and from her union with Udon came Mergo, the infant Great One that would become the source of the nightmare of Mensis. But Mergo was born wrong. The description of certain third umbilical cords tells us that Mergo was stillborn, that every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. Mergo exists in some state between life and death, present but not truly alive, crying out from within the nightmare but never truly manifesting in the waking world. The child was taken from Queen Gehrman, removed from her womb in some terrible ritual or violation, and this act of separation has bound both mother and child to an eternal state of grief. Gehrman wanders as a ghost, blood eternally flowing from her opened belly, searching for the child that was stolen from her. And Mergo cries out endlessly from within the nightmare, guarded by the wet nurse, never to know peace. This is where the school of Mensis enters the story. Mikolash and his fellow scholars were seekers of cosmic truth who believed they could commune with the Great Ones and gain from them the secrets of ascension. They discovered how to make contact with Mergo, using a third of umbilical cord to establish a connection with this formless infant Great One. They believed they were achieving something profound, that they were on the verge of the ultimate enlightenment. But what they actually achieved was the creation of the nightmare of Mensis, a twisted dream realm where their consciousness became trapped, their bodies left behind as withered husks, while their minds drifted through a nightmarish version of reality. The third umbilical cord from the school of Mensis tells us, every great one loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. This cord granted Mensis audience with Mergo, but resulted in the stillbirth of their brains. They sought enlightenment and found only madness and death. The nightmare of Mensis is sustained by Mergo's continued existence. As long as the infant Great One cries out from within the nightmare, the realm persists, trapping within it the consciousness of Mikolash and his followers, warping the very fabric of reality into impossible geometries and cosmic horrors. This is why we must venture into the nightmare, climb through the twisted architecture of Mergo's loft, and face the wet nurse that guards the infant. Mergo's wet nurse is herself a Great One, a mysterious entity whose form is shrouded in darkness and whose purpose seems to be the protection and care of this stillborn child. She can create illusions of herself, fill the area with obscuring mist, and wields multiple blades with which she attacks any who would threaten her charge. She is not evil. She is simply performing the function for which she exists, caring for a child that cannot truly live but refuses to die. When we defeat Mergo's wet nurse, when the Great One falls and the darkness clears, we hear something remarkable. We hear Mergo giggle. The crying that has echoed throughout the nightmare of Mensis finally stops, replaced by a brief sound of what might be joy or relief. Then silence. A message appears. Nightmare slain. We have not killed Mergo directly. The infant Great One was already in a state resembling death, existing in that liminal space between being and non-being. What we have done by defeating the wet nurse appears to be freeing Mergo from its torment, allowing the stillborn child to finally find the rest it could not achieve while trapped in the nightmare. And with Mergo's crying silenced, the nightmare of Mensis begins to collapse. The pale blood moon that has hung over Gehrman starts to recede. The hunt, we are told, is over, or at least it can be over if we accept Gehrman's offer to wake up from the dream. But why did we need to kill the wet nurse to silence Mergo's cry? Why could we not simply leave the infant Great One to its guardian's care, allow them to continue their eternal vigil without interference? The answer is that Mergo's continued existence was causing harm to the waking world. The nightmare of Mensis was not contained within itself. It was bleeding into reality, warping the minds of scholars who sought to commune with it, contributing to the cosmic horror that was consuming Gehrman. Moreover, Mergo's suffering was eternal. To allow the stillborn child to remain trapped in its nightmare, guarded by the wet nurse but never able to find peace, would be an act of cruelty rather than mercy. By defeating the wet nurse and allowing Mergo's consciousness to finally dissipate, we perform an act of compassion, even as we commit an act of violence. We end suffering that should never have existed in the first place. The Moon Presence wanted us to kill Mergo, or more specifically, it wanted Mergo silenced. A note found in the lecture building tells us that the nameless Moon Presence beckoned by Lawrence and his associates is connected to pale blood, and that the moon's appearance causes the line between man and beast to blur. The pale blood moon and Mergo's crying seem to be connected, both contributing to the chaos consuming Gehrman. This could imply the Moon Presence sees Mergo as a rival, another Great One attempting to claim surrogates from among humanity. It may fear that Mergo, if allowed to persist, could somehow achieve true life and become a threat to its own position. Or perhaps, in its own incomprehensible way, the Moon Presence understands that Mergo's suffering must end, that the stillborn child should be allowed to rest. Whatever the true reason, by silencing Mergo's harrowing cry, we accomplish one of the goals that the hunter's dream was created to achieve. There are other Great Ones in Bloodborne that we can encounter and defeat, though not all of them are mandatory. The lesser amygdalae that appear throughout Gehrman, once we have sufficient insight, are one example. These enormous, multi-limbed creatures cling to buildings and monuments, their bulbous heads filled with eyes that glow with arcane energy. Despite their terrifying appearance, most of the lesser amygdalae do not attack us. They simply watch, observing humanity from their vantage points, serving some purpose that we cannot fully understand. But one amygdala becomes hostile when we venture into the nightmare frontier, a realm of poison swamps and cosmic horror that exists adjacent to the waking world. Here, we must face an amygdala in direct combat, dodging its sweeping arm attacks and devastating arcane blasts. Why do we fight this amygdala? The practical answer is that it guards the path forward, that we must defeat it to progress through the nightmare frontier and continue our hunt. But the deeper answer is less clear. Unlike Rom or the Wet Nurse or the Moon Presence, this amygdala's purpose is not explicitly spelled out in the lore. Based on its placement, it could be a guardian positioned in the nightmare frontier to prevent outsiders from venturing too deep into cosmic realms where humans do not belong. It may be a prisoner trapped in the nightmare, just as hunters are trapped in the hunter's nightmare created by Kos. Or it may simply exist there because that is where it has always existed, a great one that occupies a space between the waking world and the dream, serving no particular purpose beyond its own alien existence. What we do know is that defeating it is possible, that these supposedly godlike beings can be slain by a determined hunter with enough skill and knowledge. Then there is Ebrietas, Daughter of the Cosmos, one of the most enigmatic great ones in all of Bloodborne. Ebrietas is found in a secret area beneath the Grand Cathedral, accessible only by breaking a window in the upper cathedral ward and descending through a hidden passage. When we finally reach her, we find Ebrietas bowed before the altar of despair, prostrated before what appears to be the corpse of another being similar to Rom. She does not attack us when we enter. She simply remains there, mourning or perhaps praying, unaware of our presence or perhaps simply indifferent to it. The nature of what she mourns remains a mystery, though some believe it could be Rom herself, a fellow ascended being who shared Ebrietas' fate of being left behind. Only when we attack her does she respond, rising up to defend herself with powerful arcane magic and devastating physical strikes. Ebrietas is referred to as the Left Behind or the Abandoned One in various pieces of lore. This suggests that when other great ones ascended to their higher plane of existence, Ebrietas was left behind, trapped in the labyrinth beneath Gehrman, while her peers moved beyond the physical realm. The Healing Church discovered her in the depths of the Chalice dungeons and brought her up to the secret chamber beneath the Grand Cathedral. Rather than fearing or attempting to destroy this cosmic entity, the Healing Church's elite branch, the choir, chose to protect and study Ebrietas. They established communion with her, learning from her the secrets of the cosmos, gaining from her the knowledge that would allow them to conduct their experiments in the research hall and upper cathedral ward. Ebrietas became, in essence, a captive god, worshipped and utilized by the very humans who claimed to serve the Great One's will. Why do we fight Ebrietas? She is an optional boss, easily missed if one does not know where to look. She poses no direct threat to humanity. Indeed, she seems to be one of the few great ones that genuinely desires coexistence with humans rather than using them as tools or surrogates. The choir's communion with Ebrietas granted them the ability to perform arcane miracles like a call beyond and the augur of Ebrietas, powerful cosmic spells that the church used in its operations. Without Ebrietas, the Healing Church's supply of old blood might have run dry, and their experiments in creating artificial great ones might never have progressed as far as they did. One could argue that Ebrietas is more victim than villain, a great one left behind and alone, mourning before the corpse of what may have been a companion or perhaps an attempted surrogate, simply trying to find some semblance of purpose in a cosmos that has moved on without her. And yet, we must fight her if we wish to claim the great chalice that she guards, if we wish to access the deepest and most challenging of the Chalice dungeons. More than that, We fight her because she represents the fundamental problem at the heart of Bloodborne's narrative. Ebrietas may not be actively malicious, but her very existence enables the Healing Church's atrocities. The blood ministration that has spread the scourge of beasts throughout Gehrman is widely believed to have come from her, though some suggest the old blood has deeper origins in the Chalice dungeons. The experiments that transformed innocent patients into grotesque kin were conducted using knowledge gained from her. The choir's attempts to communicate with the cosmos, to create artificial great ones like the celestial emissary and the living failures, all stem from their communion with Ebrietas. She may not have intended for her gifts to be used in such terrible ways, but her cooperation with the Healing Church made those atrocities possible. By defeating Ebrietas, we sever this connection. We prevent the Healing Church from continuing to draw upon cosmic knowledge that humanity is not ready to wield responsibly. This brings us to perhaps the most tragic and most significant of all the great ones we encounter. Kos, or as some say, Kosm. Unlike the other great ones, Kos is already dead when we find her. Her massive corpse lies on the beach of the fishing hamlet, a bloated, rotting form that resembles a combination of aquatic life and something disturbingly human. The villagers of the hamlet worshipped Kos, built their lives around her, drew power from the parasites that inhabited her body. When scholars from Bergenwerth arrived in the hamlet, accompanied by hunters that likely included Gehrman and certainly included Lady Maria, they did not come in peace. They came seeking knowledge, seeking the eyes that Master Willem believed were necessary for human ascension. They massacred the villagers, cut open their skulls looking for those metaphorical eyes, desecrated Kos's corpse in ways that the lore only hints at but never fully describes. This was the atrocity that would haunt Gehrman for the rest of his existence, that would drive Maria to forsake her weapons and take up a post guarding the secrets of the research hall. As the hunters and scholars left the fishing hamlet, having committed their terrible deeds, the dying villagers called out for vengeance. They prayed to Kos for retribution against those who had violated their holy site and slaughtered their people. And Kos, even in death, answered their prayers. She laid a curse upon the hunters responsible for the atrocity and upon all hunters who would follow in their blood-soaked footsteps. This curse ensures that when hunters die, particularly those who have become blood-drunk and lost themselves to the thrill of the hunt, they do not find peace. Instead, they are trapped in the hunter's nightmare, a twisted realm where they relive their atrocities forever, surrounded by the beasts they hunted and the bodies of those they killed. The hunter's nightmare is a purgatory for those who committed or enabled the sins of the past, and it persists as long as one particular being continues to exist. That being is the Orphan of Kos, the child that emerged from Kos's corpse after her death. Whether it was born naturally from the deceased Great One or violently ripped from her womb by the hunters who desecrated her body remains unclear, but the result is the same. The orphan is a nightmarish figure, a skeletal humanoid with a rictus grin permanently fixed on its face, wielding its own placenta as a weapon. When we first approach it on that beach beside Kos's corpse, it is not attacking us. It is simply staring up at the dark sky of the hunter's nightmare, wailing in despair at the horrible existence it has been born into. The orphan never asked to exist. It never wanted to be born into a nightmare realm as a tool of vengeance. But this is what it has become, and its continued existence perpetuates the hunter's nightmare, trapping countless souls in eternal torment. Fighting the Orphan of Kos is widely regarded as the most difficult boss encounter in Bloodborne, and for good reason. The Orphan is relentless, aggressive, unpredictable. It leaps and spins and strikes with lightning speed, its attacks covering enormous range and dealing devastating damage. In its second phase, it transforms, growing wings and becoming even more mobile, even more dangerous. It screams and calls down lightning from above, channels its mother's power through its own grief and rage. This is not a fight we can win through simple pattern recognition or memorization. This is a battle that tests everything we have learned throughout our journey, that demands perfect timing, unwavering aggression, and absolute mastery of Bloodborne's combat system. Many players spend hours or even days attempting to defeat the orphan, dying again and again to its furious onslaught. But why must we kill the orphan? What has this wailing child done to deserve being hunted down and slain? The answer is that the orphan's existence is a source of suffering for countless others. As long as it lives, the hunter's nightmare persists. All the blood-drunk hunters who have been trapped there, all the souls who cannot find peace, remain imprisoned in that twisted realm, forced to relive their sins and suffer their punishments forever. Gehrman himself is haunted by what he did in the fishing hamlet, crying out in his sleep, tormented by memories he cannot escape. The plain doll, when we speak to her after defeating the orphan, tells us that she felt Gehrman's relief, that he seemed to be freed from his shackles. By slaying the orphan, we break the curse that Kos laid upon the hunters. We free those trapped in the nightmare, allowing them to finally find the peace that has been denied to them. More than that, we free the orphan itself. After we defeat it in combat, after its physical form collapses and dissipates, we see its spirit appear over Kos's corpse. This black phantom lingers there, still bound to the beach where it was born, still trapped in the nightmare of its own existence. We must attack this phantom, must strike it one final time to truly release it. When we do, when that final blow lands, the spirit dissolves into mist that flows back toward the ocean. A voice speaks, perhaps Kos herself from beyond death, or perhaps some other cosmic presence, a bottomless curse, a bottomless sea, accepting of all that there is and can be. The blackened sky of the hunter's nightmare clears, revealing a peaceful sunset, perhaps for the first time in ages. The curse is lifted. The nightmare, while not completely destroyed, loses its grip on those it had imprisoned. The orphan returns to the ocean, to the cosmos from which it came, finally freed from the terrible existence it never wanted. This is perhaps the clearest example of why we must kill certain great ones. Not out of hatred, not for personal gain, but as an act of mercy. The Orphan of Kos is suffering, has been suffering since the moment it came into existence. It is a tool of vengeance, a manifestation of a dead god's anger, forced to exist in torment to perpetuate a cycle of punishment. By killing it, we end that suffering. We allow it to find peace, to return to whatever cosmic realm great ones inhabit when they are not bound to physical form or nightmare existence. The same is true of Mergo, trapped in its stillborn state, and even of the Moon Presence, eternally yearning for a child it cannot have. These beings exist in states of suffering that are incomprehensible to human minds, and while we may not fully understand their pain, we can recognize that their continued existence perpetuates cycles of violence and sorrow. Throughout Bloodborne, we encounter evidence of humanity's attempts to become like the Great Ones, to achieve the transcendence that scholars like Master Willem believed was the next step in evolution. These attempts have universally ended in failure and horror. The living failures in the research hall were patients of the Healing Church, who underwent experiments meant to grant them communion with the cosmos. Instead, they became mindless, bloated creatures that shamble aimlessly through the garden where they are kept. The One Reborn, summoned by Mikolash and the School of Mensis in their attempts at ascension, is a grotesque amalgamation of corpses that possesses tremendous power but no true intelligence or purpose. The celestial emissary, created by the choir as a medium to communicate with the Great Ones, is little more than a puppet, a hollow vessel that bears the appearance of cosmic enlightenment but lacks true substance. Even Rom, who supposedly succeeded in ascending to become a Great One, lost everything that made her human in the process. She gained cosmic power and the ability to create barriers across reality, but she lost her intellect, her personality, her very self. She sits in the lake at Byrgenwerth, vacuous and empty, performing her single function without thought or awareness. Master Willem's vision of fearing the old blood and instead seeking eyes on the inside to evolve humanity into something greater has been revealed as a tragic delusion. Humanity cannot become like the great ones, not truly. We can touch cosmic knowledge, we can gain insight into the true nature of reality, but we cannot transcend our fundamental nature without losing what makes us human. This is why the true ending of Bloodborne, where we consume 3/3 umbilical cords and defeat the Moon Presence to become an infant Great One, is so significant. We have not just defeated a god. We have not just broken the cycle of the hunter's dream. We have achieved what Master Willem and Lawrence and countless other scholars spent lifetimes pursuing: genuine transcendence. But we have done so not by denying our humanity, not by trying to discard our mortal limitations and leap straight to godhood. Instead, we have walked a path through darkness and blood and cosmic horror. We have confronted truths that drive others mad. We have killed gods and broken curses and freed trapped souls. We have earned our transcendence through deeds and determination, through facing the worst that the cosmos can offer and refusing to break or submit. When the plain doll cradles our transformed form in her arms, she speaks to us gently, addressing us as she always has, recognizing that despite our transformation, we are still the hunter she knew. "Are you cold?" she asks, as the sun rises over the hunter's dream. This moment is both triumph and tragedy. We have evolved beyond humanity, become something greater, achieved the ascension that so many sought. But in doing so, we have also become like the entities we fought against. We are now a great one, and every great one loses its child and yearns for a surrogate. The question that lingers is whether we too will eventually fall into that same cycle of sorrow and yearning. Will we create our own dream or nightmare, bind our own servants to an eternal hunt? Or might we, having experienced humanity before transcending it, break that cycle and forge a different path for ourselves and those who might follow? The lore does not give us a definitive answer. The game ends with the plain doll gently holding the infant, great one we have become, leaving our ultimate fate to our imagination. But what we do know is that we have accomplished something unprecedented. We have not merely survived contact with the great ones. We have fought them, defeated them, and through those battles gained the power to join their ranks. We have killed gods not out of simple aggression or the desire for power, but because those gods needed to die, because they perpetuated suffering, both for themselves and for the mortals caught in their cosmic games, because their existence was preventing true healing, true resolution to the nightmares that had consumed Gehrman. Consider the cycle that existed before we arrived in Gehrman. The healing church administered old blood drawn from Ebrietas, spreading the scourge of beasts throughout the population. The school of Mensis attempted communion with Mergo, creating the nightmare that warped reality. The Moon Presence bound hunters to the dream, using them as tools to eliminate rival great ones and seek surrogates for its lost child. Kos's curse trapped blood-drunk hunters in an eternal nightmare of guilt and punishment. Rom's barrier hid these horrors from sight, but did nothing to actually solve them. Every great one, whether intentionally or not, was contributing to a system of suffering that fed upon humanity while offering nothing but pain and madness in return. We kill the great ones to break this cycle. We shatter Rom's barrier to expose the truth that was being hidden. We defeat Mergo's wet nurse to silence the infant great one's harrowing cry and free those trapped in the nightmare of Mensis. We slay the Orphan of Kos to lift the curse on hunters and release the tormented child from its nightmare existence. We overcome Ebrietas to cut off the healing church's supply of cosmic knowledge and old blood. And we defeat the Moon Presence to free ourselves and future hunters from bondage to the dream, to break the eternal cycle of hunters replacing hunters in service to an inscrutable god. Each of these kills is an act of liberation. We are not destroying these beings out of malice or bloodlust, though the game's mechanics certainly provide us with plenty of opportunities for both. We are ending existences that should never have been allowed to persist in their current form. The Great Ones, for all their power and cosmic significance, are fundamentally tragic beings. They exist in a state of eternal yearning, forever seeking the children they cannot have, forever reaching down toward humanity to fill the void within themselves. And in that reaching, they cause tremendous harm, often without intending to, simply because the gap between their nature and ours is so vast that any interaction is bound to be catastrophic. The scholars of Bürgenwerth and the clergy of the Healing Church believed they could bridge that gap, that humanity could commune with the Great Ones and gain from them the secrets of transcendence without paying a terrible price. They were wrong. Every attempt to touch the cosmos, to draw power from the old blood, to gain eyes on the inside, has ended in horror. The patients in the research hall who were force-fed water until their heads swelled with the delusion of internal eyes. The villagers of the fishing hamlet who were butchered in the search for those same eyes. The countless citizens of Gehrman who received blood ministration and transformed into beasts. The hunters who became so drunk on blood that they lost themselves to the thrill of violence. All of these are the cost of humanity's attempts to reach beyond its grasp, to touch forces it cannot truly comprehend. But we are different. We do not seek to commune with the Great Ones or learn from them or draw power from them. Instead, we confront them directly. We fight them as equals, or at least as something close to equals. We prove through our actions that humanity is not merely prey for cosmic entities, not merely vessels to be used as surrogates or tools. We demonstrate that a determined individual, armed with nothing more than a weapon and the will to continue fighting no matter how many times they fall, can stand against gods and emerge victorious. This is the true message of Bloodborne, hidden beneath all its cosmic horror and gothic atmosphere and brutal difficulty. We are not helpless in the face of the incomprehensible. We can fight. We can resist. We can win. And when we do win, when we stand over the corpse of the Moon Presence and feel our body beginning to transform, we understand that we have not just defeated our enemies. We have transcended the very nature of the conflict. We are no longer human, but we are also not like the Great Ones that came before us. We have experienced mortality, felt fear and pain and determination, understood what it means to struggle and fail and try again. When we become an infant Great One, we carry those experiences with us. We are something new, something unprecedented in the cosmos, a being of cosmic power that remembers what it was like to be human, that understands the cost of the yearning that defines all Great Ones, that might, just might, be capable of breaking the cycle of lost children and desperate surrogacy. This is why we kill the Great Ones. Not because they are evil, though their actions often result in tremendous evil. Not because they threaten humanity, though they absolutely do threaten humanity. We kill them because they are trapped in cycles of suffering that they cannot break themselves, and those cycles are destroying everything around them. By defeating them, we free them from those cycles, or at least we try to. We cannot know if Rom found peace when she was slain, if she regained some measure of the intelligence she lost, or if she simply ceased to exist. We cannot know if Mergo truly found rest, or if the infant Great One continues to exist in some other form. We cannot know if the Moon Presence is truly dead, or if it will somehow manifest again, driven by that same yearning for a lost child. What we do know is that we tried. We faced incomprehensible cosmic horror with nothing but our weapons and our determination. We walked into nightmare realms and emerged victorious. We broke curses, shattered barriers, freed trapped souls, and ultimately ascended to become something greater than we were. The hunt is over, or at least our hunt is over. The long night is ending, or at least we have survived until dawn. And in that survival, in that ultimate victory over gods and nightmares, we have proven that humanity is not helpless, that even the greatest cosmic forces can be challenged and overcome. The Great Ones are beings of immense power and terrible tragedy. They exist on higher planes of reality, possess abilities that seem like magic to mortal eyes. And yet they are all defined by a single, universal sorrow. Every Great One loses its child and then yearns for a surrogate. This yearning drives all their actions, shapes all their interactions with humanity, and ultimately brings about their downfall. By killing them, we do not merely defeat powerful enemies. We perform acts of cosmic mercy, ending suffering that has persisted for longer than human civilization has existed. We break cycles that have repeated countless times, offer freedom to those who have been trapped in eternal torment, and ultimately prove that even gods can fall before a hunter who refuses to give up. That is why we kill the Great Ones. Not for sport, not for glory, not even for survival, though survival certainly plays a role. We kill them because they need to be killed, because their continued existence perpetuates suffering on a scale that defies human comprehension, because sometimes the only way to truly help someone is to end their torment, even if that ending comes at the edge of a blade. We kill them because we are hunters, and they are our prey, but also because we are merciful, and they are suffering. And in the cruel cosmos of Bloodborne, sometimes mercy and violence are one and the same. Closing thoughts. The lore of Bloodborne is as mesmerizing as the painted world of Elden Ring, as deep as the darkest chalice dungeon, as complex as the relationship between Gehrman and the Plain Doll. We have walked through blood-soaked streets and nightmare realms, confronted cosmic horrors and ancient curses, killed gods and freed souls. Every step of this journey has revealed new layers of tragedy, new depths of sorrow, new reasons why the hunt must continue, even when every fiber of our being screams for us to stop. The Great Ones are not simple villains to be defeated. They are complex, tragic beings whose very existence is defined by loss and yearning. And yet, for all their cosmic power, for all their otherworldly nature, they can be killed. They must be killed. And we, as hunters, as seekers of pale blood, as aspiring Great Ones ourselves, are the ones who must do the killing. So the next time you face Rom in that misty lake, or stand before Mergo's wet nurse in that dark chamber, or confront the Orphan of Kos on that nightmare beach, remember why you are fighting. Remember that you are not just defeating bosses for the sake of progression. You are ending cycles of suffering, breaking cosmic curses, freeing trapped souls from eternal torment. You are performing acts of mercy disguised as acts of violence, offering release to beings that have existed in states of yearning and sorrow for longer than human history. You are a hunter, yes, but you are also something more. You are a liberator, a breaker of chains, a slayer of gods. And in the end, you are proof that even in the darkest, most hopeless of universes, humanity can still fight, still resist, still triumph. If you enjoyed diving deep into the cosmic horrors and tragic beauty of Bloodborne's lore, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel.